Hello around the world and welcome to this, our finals of Grand Prix Brussels. 2 players left in the running to pick up the trophy here. Jeremy Desani on Esper Control, he's on the play, up against Giordano Fagioli. And Fagioli with his mono-red aggro, or nearly mono-red aggro deck, is going to be able to hope to get the early damage in here. We see at turn 1 Soulscar Mage. He has both Soulscar Mage and Bomat Courier in order to get in early damage. And with the prowess on that Soulscar Mage, he may be able to get some serious hits in before Jeremy Desani has too much going on here.
So Jeremy's hand is, I don't know, it's a strange hand. It doesn't have any blue mana. It disallows something you don't really want to have in your first hand, especially if you don't have blue mana. A Teferi and a few removal, few removal spells, but he doesn't have the mana to cast it.
Yeah, and the removal will prove pretty important here. The early Fatal Push to deal with the first creature coming from Fagioli does potentially save quite a lot of life, and indeed, by getting rid of a Bomat Courier, there's also less ability for Fagioli to refuel if it works out that he runs out of gas in the mid to late game here.
It's a nice draw here. Fetid Pools, a blue source, the fourth mana to the fourth land to cast Reska's Contempt next turn.
Yeah, Vraska's Contempt, the life gain on it, pretty pertinent in addition to anything else. And watching Fagiolo having to...
Passing on turn 3.
Yeah, the red deck should not be doing that most of the time. This signals to me that a slightly unusual draw from the Italian player here. Giordano, his is the list that should be pushing the tempo. We're going into turn 4 here, and he's only dealt 2 damage, and Vraska's Contempt can just turn all of that around.
I mean, if Jeremy can play his Teferi with no aggression on the other side and 20 life, that's...
Yeah, that's the dream. That's exactly what you're hoping to achieve, but realistically recognizing that that's a bit of a vain hope most of the time as your Esper control against these aggressive red decks.
So what could be in Giordano's hand? Like 4 drops and burn?
I mean, the burn spells, I can see how you might want to hold on to them. There's no need to deploy them too early.
Maybe Hazaret here?
And if he's passing on 4 mana, then something very strange is going on. In a hand of sort of shock, lightning strike. Kind of interesting, I suppose.
So we see a Phoenix, Scrounger, Mountain, and Hazaret. Ugh.
Yeah, got to get some cards out of the hand, even if it's just to make sure that Hazaret does something here. Rekindling Phoenix. Immediately getting hit by Vraska's Contempt.
Oh, there's only 1 Contempt. There's the Gear Hulk as well. There was a second one. I saw it correctly.
Okay, so an additional land coming to play here for Jeremy Desani. He does have to come play tapped, which means that he's not going to be able to deploy a Planeswalker this turn, but still... He's not going to mind if he's delayed a little bit in deploying some of his big threats because he's not taken that much damage so far. It's really not been a big concern for him, the amount of aggression that Fagioli has been able to put down just yet.
Even Hazaret here. Hazaret would not be able to attack, and that would give a good window for Jeremy to just kill it. So Giordano has the choice to either play his other spells and place Hazaret next turn when... Jeremy decides to play Teferi if he so decides to.
Yeah, and I guess that a Hazaret immediately being able to attack is kind of ideal when your opponent's just resolved their Planeswalker. 5 damage, a great way of dealing plenty to any Planeswalker that comes down. As things stand, though, if this ends up being a staring contest, I can't help but think that it's going to be Fagiolo that has to blink first.
Yeah, blinking context against someone who plays Gorgon spells. I mean, Vraska is a Gorgon, so if you don't want to have a staring contest with her.
I agree, my friend. So here we see what it is that Giordano is going to throw down. Scrap Heap Scrounger entering the fray.
Why is it before attack?
I guess, yeah, unsure. So this is still just an attack for 1. The Scrap Heap Scrounger does not trigger the prowess on Soulscar Mage. Lightning Strike, though, that will do so.
All right, that's...
It's a good way of making sure that next turn's God will be able to attack.
Well, it's also a good way to tell Jeremy that he has a Hazoret in hand.
Another Vraska's Contempt here. I guess that one thing to say about this matchup is Vraska's Contempt, a much, much better removal spell than any of the others available for Jeremy Dzani for a lot of the creatures that Giordano throwing down. Scrap Heap Scrounger and the Rekindling Phoenix, the kind of things that you want to exile, but there are still more creatures that really you do want to try and completely remove from the game if you can here.
So Jeremy recognized that Giordano was holding a Hazoret, and he just didn't tap out for his Teferi and just waited to counter it.
Yeah, the other way, of course, that you can deal with the big god. And I mentioned before the top of this game that if Jeremy Dzani could get to the mid or late game with double-digit numbers of life, then he would probably be doing all right. He's exceeded that by some margin here.
Yeah, Giordano is not going anywhere in this game. I mean, Jeremy's going to be able to play his Gearhulk here for 2 more life, or to counter something else at 14 life. His clock is going to be much faster.
Yeah, Fagioli, his draws have really not helped him here. 5 land, pretty much the upper bound of how many this mostly red aggro deck is ever going to want to have in play. Meanwhile, Jeremy Dzani with 6 mana, he's just rocking and rolling. Casting a Glimmer of Genius.
The luxury to just end of turn, Glimmer, and not in any rush to do anything, to deploy a Gearhulk. So I think he's setting up his Teferi nicely here.
Even gets to cycle a land. Look at that. 6 mana spent on drawing 3 additional cards. This is the dream for Esper Control in game 1.
Yeah. Teferi is going to gain him like 5 life because Giordano is going to be attacking it. And that's not even going to work because he drew Vraska's Contempt, so he will be able to protect his Teferi as well.
Yeah, being able to have enough lands in play to cast a fairy, tick up, untap lands, be able to then cast meaningful interaction spells in a matchup like this against what should be a very aggressive deck. Just ideal.
Yeah, Giordano's hand was way too slow. But you can't really mulligan too much against Esper in game 1. I mean, you kind of hope that you draw a good follow-up to your draw. No, he decides to not play his Teferi. I mean, he doesn't have to.
Yeah, as long as he's still got meaningful plays in hand anyway, he can hold back, make sure that things are completely safe here. And
things were safe, but not safe enough.
Soulscar Mage has done a lot of damage in this game. It's been a little lava axe on the ground. But the first 10 damage, yeah, the red decks get that fairly easily. The second 10, that can be kind of trickier. Goblin Chainwhirler. Dzani deciding if he wants that one to resolve.
Alright, so I guess that's the time for the... That's enough value for Gearhulk to arrive. Or does he want to play Vraska's Contempt? Glimmer of Genius instead?
I mean, it's one of those things that if it's a Vraska's Contempt, that's not good for Fagioli. But if it's a Glimmer, it's almost worse because that signals the power of what Jeremy has going on that he can choose to ignore the 3/3 first striker. As things stand, Dzani's life total neatly padded by all of these copies of Vraska's Contempt. He also has a much, much bigger threat on the battlefield. And a Teferi.
Yeah, he just wanted to have his Gearhulk online before he played his Teferi.
When a hero comes along.
No attacks from the Gearhulk. Again, Giordano with only 1 card, so nothing really to be afraid of.
Kari Zev. I mean, this is the point in the game where you kind of look at the overall power level of the cards being played by each of these players, and it's not close. They're in the same stage of the game land-wise, but Jeremy Dzani is playing game-ending threats. Meanwhile, Giordano's just finding the cards that ideally he wanted on turn 2.
They're all rare mythics.
Yeah, I mean, I guess this is true. In fact, every permanent on the battlefield for Jeremy Dzani, apart from 1 basic swamp, is a rare or mythic. Teferi ticking up here.
Jordan has so many dead draws as well. Like a shock would be a dead draw. Lightning strike is a dead draw.
Yeah, I mean, with the Soulscar Mage, their prowess, they shrink that Gear Hulk a small amount, but we're talking about little pecks while there are giant bites coming out of what Fagiolo has going on, thanks to each and every play coming from Jeremy Desani here. A lot of patience being shown by Jeremy here in terms of even considering attacking. As long as he's ticking that Teferi up, he doesn't mind taking it a little bit slow here.
And look at his hand as well. The gate is a scatter.
Yeah, Hazaret was at its best in the format when it was playing against other red decks. There was nothing that could be done to stop it coming into play, and once it was in play, it was difficult to deal with. These Esper control decks so frequently can stop Hazaret even making it onto the battlefield, at which point it's just another creature.
It's finally time to attack. I think he's safe enough here. I mean, he has 6 cards in hand, a Gear Hulk, counter spells.
Cast down for the one creature that Fagiolo has been able to keep on the battlefield for much of this game.
Oh,
and
here we go.
2 lands left in hand for Giordano. He scoops up his cards. Jeremy Desani gets through game 1 easily. That was a combination of a pretty good draw for Jeremy. He had the early interaction to deal with what was going on from Giordano's side, but the main thing was Fagiolo just really didn't have much of anything in that game.
Well, there could have been a better draw. Could have been a little...
For Jeremy?
No, for Giordano. Could have been.
I agree.
Could have been a little better. Turn three play would have been a little better.
Yeah, not having anything at all on turn 3 just gave Jeremy so much time to work with.
Jeremy having a fatal push as well.
So the players are having a look at deck lists and trying to figure out how they want to sideboard, and we're going to do something relatively similar here. So let's start off by having a look at Giordano Fagiolo's mostly red aggro deck. So it felt like game 1 he ought to have had a pretty reasonable set of draws. He gets to adjust his deck slightly here. There look to be some good ones against control for the likes of with the likes of Chandra, for example.
All right, so what I would see, Phoenix can go. I don't think Phoenix is very good in this match. I mean,
it seems as easy to remove as almost any other
slow,
creature.
And you take out your braids to kill it in response to Rescue's Contempt. So I don't think unless you keep the Phoenixes. A braid also not exactly exciting.
Yeah, once Torrential Gearhulk's being cast, you're probably not in good shape anyway.
Yeah. Chandra, I would definitely board in Chandra.
So that could be a straight swap for a braid, for example.
Yeah. So how many slots is that?
So there's 2 Rekindling Phoenix in the main at the moment. So if we
3
put
braids,
in,
that would be 5 slots.
So we got 2 more spaces that we can bring something in here.
I don't know. I kind of like Insult.
Yeah?
Yeah. I don't know how good it is in this match. I haven't tried, but
Doubling up your damage.
If you have a Scrounger or a Scrounger and a Soulscare Mage, and you're in the play.
Yeah.
And you have to kill something. If that's still like between 2 and 4 damage or more. If you have Soulscare Mage turn 1, Scrounger turn 2, you insult and attack.
That's 10 damage.
That's 10 damage. Yeah. You take for 1, so you go down to 9, and then you have the injury for 2 more damage.
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with you. I like the notion of keeping the curve pretty low, keeping aggressive, because the games where you let Jeremy Desani get up to 6 mana are not games that you're favoured in at that point.
No.
All right, well, let's have a look at the other deck on the other side of things. Jeremy Desani, his list, we've already seen how it works in game 1. He has options to bring in creatures in game 2. Is that an attractive option?
I don't think so. I don't think Jeremy is going to board in much. He might be boarding in Yahini's Expertise. He could be boarding in Ballista. I don't see him boarding in anything else. I mean, Chromium is not there for this matchup. Detection Tower, there's no reason to. Duress, would you board in Duress and Chandra? Probably not. I think the active spells are just better. The chance of missing with Duress is too big, I think. And also, if you duress a spell, and then you get punished by Azerite on the next turn because they have just one card in hand, that's a risk you can be taking.
So in terms of cards being taken out here, I mean, Forsake the Worldly, yes, it can exile the likes of Scrap Heap Scrounger, but I'm not sure if that's quite good enough. Negate, I'm not sure if it's got quite enough targets. And if we're only talking about bringing in 2 cards, are they the 2 easiest cuts here?
I think maybe I would say if there are cards to cut, Disallow would be one of them, especially on the draw.
Okay.
Maybe Glimmer of Genius on the draw. These are 2 cards I would maybe Syncopate as well.
Is this because they're not particularly mana efficient?
Yes, and because you're on the draw and then you want something to interact with the board, especially in this match.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's pretty much what I would consider. I haven't talked to him to know exactly what he would board in and out, but these are my suggestions.
Yeah, I mean, it seemed to me like in game 1, the main concern was just sort of making sure that you make it to the mid and late game. Obviously, part of that isn't really down to Jeremy's draws at all, not so much as how Giordano ends up playing out his first few turns. I definitely see the point about Syncopate being a little clunkier on the draw than it is on the play. On the play, you can frequently use it as a 2-mana counter spell without too much problem. On the draw, maybe not quite so much.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so let's have a look at how these players are doing. Looks like they're just they've done their sideboarding and just shuffling up here. Let's have a very brief look at how these 2 players got to where they are in the finals, because some similar roads in some regards, in that both of them in the quarterfinals had to play against Esper Control. Giordano Fagiolo defeated Arne Huschenbeth in the quarterfinals before facing down Thomas Mechin. Mechin on the Turbo Fog list, but I can't help but think that insult to injury, a big factor in terms of making that matchup a little bit more straightforward to him. Fagiolo in the finals. And then on the other side of things, if you're looking for a match from this entire tournament to check out, I would strongly recommend having a look at Guillaume Wafo-Tapo versus Jeremy Desani in the quarterfinals. I know that there are some players that perhaps look at an Esper Control mirror and think, wow, snoozeville. But to them, I would say, eat your greens. This is how you learn to get better at Magic. These 2 titans of the game, using every single tool available to them to try and find a way through. Ultimately, Jeremy did win that match. No spoilers, it's still definitely worth watching. And he then played against Alexander Gordon-Brown, who had a really interesting Sultai list, but ultimately did...
not fit to beat Esper.
Yeah, it was really built to deal with other types of decks in the format, and that has led us here to the final. And we see Giordano. You mentioned that the mono-red deck, not necessarily one that can mulligan easily. That's what it's having to do here in this second game, and now it's just up to Desani to decide whether or not his 7 is going to be good enough. Looks like he's content. It's a strange one, because I've watched Jeremy play a fair amount in tournaments. Obviously, you've tested with him as well. The impression I always get while watching him play in a high-pressure situation is that
he's always losing. He
does feel that pressure. He looks like he's worried about everything that's going on.
When you play next to him and he opened his hand, he's like, oh, okay, I keep. And you look at his hand, it's like, yeah, well, that's a pretty good hand. What are you? No, I don't know. Like, this could be better. Yeah, well, but you're still keeping, right? Yeah, of course.
So it's not some sort of a ploy or a game. He's not trying to project weakness when he's strong. It's just that for Jeremy, he's looking for the ways that he could potentially not have things go his way. And so, yeah, I mean, to look at him now, you would think that his hand was awful and just barely keepable. But having seen Jeremy play a lot, it may very well be that he's sat there with the perfect 7.
He's got the nuts, yeah.
All right, so once again we see a turn 1 Soulscar Mage from Fagiolo and a tap land on turn 1 from
I could see why he was worried.
Yeah, this is a hand without too much early interaction. Jeremy Desani will be taking a hit or 2 here. Just the 1 point coming from Fagiolo on his first set of attacks there with that Soulscar Mage. There is another Soulscar Mage, and there is a land. Okay, I was a little worried for a minute there.
Yeah, there's no second land.
No second land would be a great way to get bounced out of this finals. Drowned Catacomb coming along.
Yeah, the first interaction is going to be a disallow. That does not quite interact so well with the board. You see a Crasher? Wow.
All right. This is the kind of start that I was talking about that potentially is going to be really scary for the Esper control deck to deal with. An attack for 5 on turn 3.
Yeah, Jeremy needs a removal here.
And a little shake of the head from the Frenchman as he picks up his
Another
card.
land.
He's got the first interaction he's going to have with the permanents on the battlefield is going to be Vraska's Contempt on turn 4. Yes, he's got counter magic here on turn 3, but Giordano here, he can just keep swinging in. 9 points of life remaining, and post-combat, what do we have from the Italian? Arncrop Crasher, the haste on it, really, really important. And for a while, it wasn't clear what the best 3-drops were in traditional black-red. Once you get into closer to mono-red, Arncrop Crasher especially looking very potent indeed. Goblin Chainwhirler immediately being hit by Disallow. In this matchup, the Chainwhirler falling a distant second to Arncrop Crasher, I would suggest.
Some more lands for Jeremy here. He's going to be able to kill one of Jorna's creatures this turn. Jorna has mana for Hazaret. Alright, it's going to meet Vraska's Contempt. But he's going to take 3 in the trade. 2 from the Soulscar Mages and 3 from the Crasher. But he gains 2 life, so it's
still down on 6 life. And this is not a list that runs sweepers of the likes of Settle the Wreckage, for example, that you see in the blue-white control lists. It's much more about one-for-ones in the early to mid-game, and it's only really once you start casting Teferi to draw extra cards, Glimmer of Genius to draw extra cards, and indeed using your Torrential Gearhulk to get something back that you really find yourself well ahead on cards. And down so low on life, we might be quickly heading to a game 3 here.
Like, even if he glimmers into a Fatal Push, he can only kill one of the Soulscar Mages.
Yeah, if there's any kind of burn in hand here for Fagiolo, it could be all over this turn.
Chandra. Oh.
2 prowess triggers, in some respects, more important than the Planeswalker herself.
So is there a way for Jeremy to survive this turn? If he has to counter Chandra, but then he's dead on board with the creatures. So, yeah, there's no way. So he did not have the nuts.
Yeah, in spite of the fact that Fagiolo went down to 6 cards there, his 6 cards served him very, very well. And it turns out that in this instance, Dazani looking a bit concerned, and with good reason.
Yeah.
He will be on the play in this 3rd game, though, and that may lead to a few spot adjustments here. Syncopates get a little bit better on the play than they are on the draw. Fagiolo also double-checking his sideboard, deciding if there's much he wants to change. My gut feeling is that there's less opportunity for adjusting the deck for the mostly red aggro than there is for Dazani based on play or draw.
Yeah, the counter spells are much more efficient on the play. Like being able to play a Syncopate on turn 2 for a Scrounger, that's huge. And not being able to counter the second creature is it's really bad.
I mean, it must be said there that there's sort of a lot of the heavy lifting that was done.
But Soulscar Mages.
Yeah. Getting those early creatures down before there was any kind of interaction from Dazani. Yes, Arncrop Crasher hits for more and hits harder, but that at least there was the potential that Dazani might have had an answer for. The first 2 Soulscar Mages, they were a guarantee. They were going to get in. They were going to get in for a whole bunch of points, and that was what finished things off in game 2.
And all the Chandra, Hazaret, they just kept Jeremy busy. Like, he couldn't just draw cards from Glimmer. He had to kill the Hazaret. He had to do something about Chandra. Well, that was not enough because there were creatures on the board, and he couldn't interact with the board. So had Jordan not had Chandra, Jeremy could have looked for Fatal Push, for example, with the Glimmer, with the 1 mana untapped. He would have survived on 1 life. That's not great, but then he would have had a Torrential Gearhulk to flash back the Contempt. So keeping Jeremy busy, that's the plan. That's the mid-game plan. Mid-game being after turn 3.
Yes. Dazani, no interaction in the early doors of that game. Wasn't able to get things going. On the play here, we'll find out whether or not he's going to be able to do a little better in this, what will be the very final game of Grand Prix Brussels. Dazani, he's been in the finals a lot recently.
Twice this season. I think 6 times in total. He won 2 GPs, and I think he lost 4 times in the finals. So he wants to make it 3-4.
Yeah.
Still not as good as, 5-4, but that's the way there.
One step at a time. Just see if he can pick up those trophies. The Frenchman who's been living in Japan for a little bit.
He's moving back. He moved back last week.
That meaning that this is a much more local GP for him than it would have otherwise been. All right, both players keeping on 7. The tap land not going to hurt Jeremy too much, and he's got an early fatal push, so whichever the first creature is that comes in, he'll be able to do something about. The fact that it's a Bomat Courier does mean that Jeremy taking a little bit of damage in this first turn of the game.
It's a pretty good hand on Jeremy's side. He has lands, he has 2 removal, he has Glimmer, he has Teferi. If you had to choose your hand, that's probably the one you would take.
All right, well, we'll see what Fagiolo is going to be able to do about that. Gets another hit in here. 2 cards now stacked away on the delivery bugs hopper. And Dazani just takes the damage for now. We'll find out what comes next. Kari Zev. That one represents a reasonable amount of damage if it gets to attack.
So do you Essence Scatter here, or do you Fatal Push?
It's a good question. It's one that Jeremy Dazani is having a little think about before providing his answer.
So there's good thing for both, because if you want to, if you Essence Scatter now, then you don't have an answer to a Crasher next turn. If you Fatal Push, you don't have an answer to Bomat Courier this turn, or the next turn. And you, it can get out of hand.
Well, there's not a full 4 Arm Crop Crashers, just the 2 of them in Fagiolo's list. So it does end up being the Essence Scatter here.
All right, or Hazoret. Anything that has haste and that attacks for a lot.
All right, no haste to this turn. And that does mean that we're going to see a Fatal Push. And it's a Fatal Push by the looks of things with that extra card being exiled on the stack. Fagiolo likes his hand enough that he's not going to be sacrificing the Bomat Courier just now.
These cards are lost forever. The gifts are not being delivered.
Yeah,
and nothing to play on turn 4.
Just a lightning
on
strike.
Turn 3, sorry. Well, that's good news.
Great,
very good
great news for Jeremy Dazani.
Yeah.
He would much rather find himself just facing down a little bit of burn than actual factual creatures. The creatures represent a lot more damage in the long term. Another Bomat Courier.
Yeah, that's good.
3 cards left in hand.
Buff.
Yeah, these little nibbles from the Bomat Courier, Jeremy Dazani, he can take them for a while.
So this is the big spell now. Oh, Glorybringer. In Jeremy's hand. In the Jordan's hand.
Well, I mean, at this stage in the game, resolving 5 drops against an Esper control player who's only shown 1 counterspell thus far, I think it's reasonable to think
pretty ambitious.
There will be responses. Dazani, head in hands. As previously mentioned, it's really difficult to tell when he's happy and when he's not happy while playing a game of Magic.
I actually don't watch when when he plays.
Yeah,
I just want to know what the result is. What the result is. It's making me too nervous. Big decision here. No removal in the top 2 cards, but a syncopate, and he can know that there's no Hazoret in Giordano's hand. Well, maybe there is. He didn't want to play it. He preferred to play the Bomat this turn.
So Dazani, he's got cards to work with. More burn coming from Fagiolo here. Another lightning strike to the head.
So Torrential Gearhulk is the next way to deal with Bomat Courier. It can either block or flashback
Fatal
A
push.
fatal push, yeah.
Giordano here. His hand a little bit mysterious in terms of the way that he's played things out thus far. If you're Desani, I guess you suspect that there must be something big and expensive in there. And
Or just more burn. Could be more burn as well.
And there's 2 lightning strikes and 4 shocks left in the deck in terms of the ones in the main deck that could be fired off.
So what's happening this turn? Glorybringer is going to face a Syncopate. Most likely.
Yeah, it doesn't even need to be a big syncopate here.
Yep.
Exile the big dragon. There it goes.
With the exile pile with the...
Off away with the wrapped up presents that Giordano doesn't get a chance to have a look at until after this game is complete.
The Glorybringer doesn't even get to look at them either. So do you play Torrential Gearhulk doing main step here to kill the Bowmat?
I mean, given the number of cards in Fagiolo's hand, there's definitely a temptation.
Yeah.
All right, there we go.
That's
There's the Torrential
what's
Gearhulk. Oof. More presents left without
Oh,
a
the
recipient.
dragon gets to see these guys.
Yeah, you can see he's peeking underneath,
Yeah.
giving a little shake.
6 mana. Oh, wow, that's...
This is not
This
the way
is-
that
this
Fagiolo
is-
will have wanted this game
Yep.
to go.
He has, what, 1 or 2 cards?
Yeah, when Jeremy Desani is starting to attack him with Torrential Gearhulk, that's a sign that he feels like this game is not long before completion. He can almost taste it. Finally, he's going to get there, pick up a trophy this season.
Yeah.
Giordano,
10 life.
Fagiolo.
How?
I mean,
What's the combination of cards that...
is it insult, injury, shock?
Lightning Strike.
I don't think he's got quite enough mana for that.
I know he has it. He has 6 mana. He needs 6 mana for that.
Well, insult and injury on its own is
Oh,
6.
no, but you can just play Insult.
just
then
play
Shock,
Insult.
Lightning Strike. Chandra.
I mean, all of this is in a world where Jeremy Desani, the control player, doesn't have any control
Anything,
elements
yeah.
to be able to stop what's going on the other side of the table. Allows Goblin Chainwhirler to be revealed off.
All right, this sounds good. Sounds good for Jeremy.
Counter your Goblin Chainwhirler.
And that's it.
10 mana. And there we go. Massive fist pump there from Jeremy Desani. He's finally found himself on the victor's podium at the end of a Grand Prix. It's been a rough old ride for him in terms of finally getting a trophy this season, but Esper Control, the weapon of choice for him that's been able to get him there. He had a tough old quarterfinal against Guillaume Wafotapa, and you can see there the elation on Jeremy Desani finally getting that victory, and having been close a couple of times before, it will only have tasted the sweeter now that he's finally been able to get there. Congratulations to your teammate Jeremy Desani, our champion here at Grand Prix Brussels. Well, a little bit of egg on my face there. I felt like there was the potential for the red deck to be able to get things going, and we saw a little bit of that in Game 2, able to get the early jump on what's going on from the Esper Control deck, but the draws from Giordano Fagiolo, just not what was needed.
I
in order
knew
to
it all
deal
along.
with,
I knew it all along. I told you.
This is why you're in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, well.
And it may be that at some point we see Jeremy Desani making a run for that as well. He's been a Player of the Year in the past, and he's still racking up the wins. Let's have a look at our final bracket there. He beat Guillaume Wafotapa, Hall of Famer from France, in the quarterfinals, Alexander Gordon-Brown in the semis, and in the finals, Giordano Fagiolo. Between the three of them, they represented a wide cross-section of the different decks in this standard format. And indeed, our top 8 most populated by Esper Control decks. That a really big change from what I think anyone was expecting going into this event. And for players who are trying to prepare for standard going forward, well, you know, there might be a new sheriff in town. We have control on the metagame now. We have combo in the form of our mono blue lists. And to be honest,
Turbo Fog.
Turbo Fog definitely feels like a combo deck once it's doing things. There's certainly aggro. This is a big old mix. All of those decks seem appropriate to potentially take to the event, and that means this standard format, it's got a few moving parts that I kind of like. So we're going to get a chance to head down to our feature match area to have a few words with our champion, Jeremy Dezani. First up, congratulations.
Thank you.
You've got the trophy in your hands. It's been a wild tournament. It's been a wild top 8. You've had to play through a lot of different types of opponents in this top 8.
Yes.
At what point did you really start to see, you know what, this trophy could be mine?
Well, I think the key match was definitely the quarterfinal because to my experience, the Esper Control Mirror match is not that skilled, especially game 1, because basically if one of the two players stop landing every turn and start to discard and draw the removal you don't need, well, it's definitely a game you can't really control. Well, at the end, I'm very happy how I played it, but yeah, I'm very happy about this result. I lost a lot of final recently of GP. Sometimes because too tired, sometimes just keep bad hand in final because I have some regrets about it. And no, I'm very happy I can get the trophy and didn't lose a game today at 10-0. It's crazy, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, today has just been kind of the dream. And looking at the way that the finals shaped up, it seemed to me like the draw that you faced against in game 2 could easily have come up a lot. You could easily have found yourself against the early rush and not had the early interaction.
Well,
ultimately, the draws kind of went in your way in the final, and the interaction that you had did gain you the life that meant ultimately you made it look easy in that finals.
Well, I think it's the game 1, even on the draw or the play, it's better for me because the red deck have some Abrade, Chalk, and Incinerate that are not great. So this is why being on the draw is not a problem game 1. But it become more close after sideboard. Like today, I think I won all my game 1 and all my game 3. Basically on the draw after sideboard, I think my sideboard is not enough for this matchup. On the draw on the play is very easy. I feel I'm very ahead. But on the draw, well, I don't think I'm ahead. I think it's very good for the red deck. So if players want to play the same deck as mine, I think they need to have some more early game for the on the draw game. Yeah.
Well, plenty to watch for people looking back to learn from you in terms of the deck, and also some sage advice there. Congratulations to you, Jeremy Dezani.
Thank you so much.
Our winner here at Grand Prix Brussels.
Thank you to Raf, my master.
Congratulations, Raf there, the master of Jeremy Dezani, Team Connected Company, getting the win here in Brussels, in Belgium. Thank you to all of you guys for watching and to all of our players for giving us such fantastic entertainment throughout this tournament. A lot of different decks in standard that I very much enjoyed. I know that Riley and Simon on video, and of course Toby Henker and Frank Carsten doing our text coverage have also very much enjoyed seeing what's going on here. From Rich, our producer, Stephen on production, everyone here, Neil and Max over in our feature match area, we wish you a very good night from Brussels. It's been a fantastic tournament.